Oops, I should have.
Okay, whoops.
Ooh, fancy page. You got
Yeah,
variables
sorry.
all over the place. Very nice.
I was trying to figure out what was going on and what wasn't. All right, so this issue, the challenge I'm having is I have two groups, the users and the other parties. Is that right? Yeah. And then I combine them into another list, which is called the delivery parties. And I do that so I can, in the form, I can just go through and put delivery party 0's info in here, delivery party 1's info here, and or 0, 1, 2, and I'll have additional pages and things like that. It's working fairly well. And I had to do some things in the attachment block to make sure I'm using, sometimes I wanted to use users or other party info, and sometimes I wanted to use I could just reference it by delivery party. But the issue I'm having here is that I'm not able to get this email address show up.
Oh,
and I've assigned it by, let me go to the, that's not it. Okay, so here's the question that says, how are you going to deliver? And if you say, I want to deliver by email, it says, okay, let's get their email address.
That looks right, yeah.
And it seems to be okay. Oh, and then I'll show you the attachment block to see what I'm trying to put in there. So here's where I say put this email address into this field. I haven't gone through to make sure that I didn't mess up a label. That is a possibility.
You asked are you sure you asked the email of the first delivery party individual?
Yeah, so something to keep in mind is that the instance name won't be delivery parties 0. It'll be something else, like either probably other parties. I think you had first.
Well,
then 0 probably. Not that doesn't necessarily matter, but yeah, let's look at the variables and values and just see what they are, because that's for this run you're saying, right? Like,
yeah.
So
right.
Let's take a look.
Okay. So when I look at the variable, I don't know if you can see this. This is really small.
Let's scroll up a little bit and just see what object we're inside of. I'm assuming it's the one that you are looking for, but is this the delivery parties?
Let me make sure I have the right one. All right, so it's not, okay. Yeah, so one of the parties in this case is Walgreens, and they are represented by Larry Lawyer.
Okay.
So that's who we are looking at. So I think this is...
Oh, so it would be their attorney, right? That's who we're looking at, not the party.
Right, but that variable is defined as...
So you're using the email address of the party to store who they're contacting, even if the person being contacted as the attorney.
Oh yeah, that I think I understand now what the issue is. Yeah, so it's probably the .lawyer, which is an individual, and it's that email address. Okay,
That might be it. Yeah. So if you're collecting it as the attorney's email, then that would be it.
gotcha.
But let's see.
Okay.
One other thing that you might want to do, I guess you can assume there's always one other person that you're serving. But instead of using bracket 0, you might want to use .item 0, which won't trigger an exception if the item isn't defined. That actually might not matter because we're using skip undefined at the top level. So you can ignore that suggestion, actually, now that I think about it.
Okay. But I think that makes sense. I think I can do something similar to what I do, excuse me, here. So in the delivery party name, I say put the lawyer's name there if they're represented. Otherwise, put the party's name. And I think I'll want to do something similar. Say put the lawyer's email address if they're represented. Otherwise, put the party's email address. If that makes sense.
Exactly. Yeah. It would be very similar to that. And something that I didn't realize very early on at all, it took me a while to learn, is you can use a full, if you put a vertical pipe there, like at the beginning of line 611, right here, actually, not the very beginning of the line, but right after the colon. You can use like a full multi-line markdown and Mako block there. So hit enter, indent it.
So just like code.
Yeah.
Just like the code specifier or like the sub-question specifier.
More like the sub-question one, because you can use that. That's the point here.
Oh, sorry. Yes, sub-question, less like code, not Python. Sorry.
Indent it one more time, and then you could use like the %if at the beginning of that line. Hit enter. It just makes it a little bit easier to read an if statement if you unroll it that way.
Yeah,
is what I found.
Yeah,
and the one-line if statements just can be so hard to read.
It certainly is. Okay.
So here we put like if, you would copy everything after that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I guess.
Sorry, I'll move my arrow out of the way.
Yeah, that's good.
This is just something I just want to make sure you knew was possible, because you might not have seen it in all of our other code, but it can be very helpful. So I don't indent inside a Mako block just because it has a different meaning. I know you do inside Python, but so
it'd be here.
It'll be inside the it'll be at the beginning of the line, so it would line up with the % symbol.
Oh, really? All the way up back here?
Yeah. There's no indentation for a Mako block. And then you still do need % for the else.
Oh, right.
And you need to put this inside Mako tags. So $ curly bracket still around the variables.
That makes sense.
So just like in a sub question or a question block, like it just gives you more room to do it. And you're missing one more thing. Well, two more things, little things here. Just a colon. Yeah. And then on line 614, same.
Yes. Okay.
So yeah, just before you make another if statement, I just thought I would point out that that's a way you can write it. And then you need an end if at the end.
Okay. Oh, that I find that so much more readable. I was just doing the quick and dirty method to get it to work, but this is better. Is end if one word here? Yes. Or two? Okay.
One word, just like that. Yep. I know it's hard to remember between hot docs and DocAssembly.
Yes. Okay.
Python and Mako.
So in here, I want to do the similar thing. This should be my. Oh boy. Just made a mess.
Yeah, it's like just the first line.
Where did I? Oh,
just have a little extra space there. Yeah.
That's right.
All right.
Okay. So now.
And then you would have .email instead of. Yeah. That's it.
Okay. I see. complaints there. Let me quickly, sorry, this will just take a second, replicate this down for delivery parties 2 and 3. Wait, where do I? Oh, I see. Yeah. So I can make sure it works. Sure, there's got to be a more elegant solution here, but this is working. Okay, so delivery to party name. Okay.
I would suggest testing it a bit before, just to make sure it's working before doing everything, right?
All right. Well, I had to test this, do the second one, just because that's the my user that has the variable, or that is the lawyer.
Did you save the file? Playground file.
Maybe not. Can I, hopefully I can just do a refresh.
Do you know if it is, if that is delivery parties 0, did you collect if this is the lawyer, did you collect the lawyer's email at some point?
Yeah, well, so that's what this, this is it right here.
Okay. Where, on what object is that? In what object? What is the instance name? Other parties 1.address. So
One thing that
this
might
looks
help
like it's other parties.
while we're working is just to put this into something like JSON editor online, so we can expand and collapse the structures. Otherwise, so we don't have to rely on the indentation of the JSON.
Okay. So should I?
Exactly.
What's a good?
Yeah, JSON editor online is the one I usually use, but just because it came up first in Google once and it works fine. There are other ones too. And then I just use the copy button because on the right it's already in the tree format, but you could also use the toggle there. And yeah.
Goodbye.
So now you want to expand variables.
Oh,
so
yeah.
Little
That's
yeah,
right.
and then you can browse down to the one you're looking in.
Okay. So other parties.
Then inside elements is where the actual people appear.
Okay, so this should be 1, I think. So let me just make sure. Yeah, so there, Walgreens is the name of the company, and the lawyer's name is Larry Lawyer.
And does Larry Lawyer have an email?
Yeah, it should. Well, that's the, yeah, so the email is up here with, so it's connected to
Walgreens or Walmart or whatever that is.
so I'm a little confused because I can access all these other values by saying delivery parties sub 1 dot whatever it is.
Can we see delivery parties specifically instead of other parties?
Sure.
And are you sure that it is delivery parties 1 that is that field? That is associated with that field?
Well, I am not sure anymore.
I'm also trying to think.
Where?
And I would also be interested in going back to the playground just to see that if statement, that specific one for email. Could you go there? So it says if delivery parties is represented, then use delivery parties.lawyer.email. Now it looks like is represented is true, correct?
Well, I
And
think.
then the lawyer does not have an email.
Right. Well, that's the. So this is where it's confusing. It's. Yeah, it should be true because it only.
If
Yes.
it's true, it makes sense that you're getting the result you're getting because the lawyer does not have an email, and so nothing is going to show in that field.
And this attachment block will never trigger the definition of the email for the lawyer. It'll skip it.
Okay. Well,
You have to look at the logic that you're using now that triggers asking for emails and make sure you trigger the lawyer's email when you need the lawyer's email.
well, so this is the.
So here you're asking for.
So here's the.
Email. Is that?
Yeah. So here's
This
the.
looks like Walgreens email, not the lawyer.
Exactly. Yeah. So
So
that's
you are
right.
assigning it to Walgreens or Walmart or whatever that is.
it probably is fine to have a follow-up question here at that point. Where do you ask for the delivery method?
It's
Where
right
do you
here.
trigger the delivery method, rather, is what I mean. Not the question that defines it, but where is it triggered?
Right here.
Okay. So here we would need to also ask, so yep, see you're triggering person.lawyer.named at first. You'd also want to trigger person.lawyer.email if the delivery method is email.
Or add the email field to the place that asks the lawyer's name, right?
But I
Do you
only.
have a particular question now for lawyer's name, or are you using a built-in question? Probably it would make sense to have a custom question there, but
Yeah. So let me hang on. Let me just go back a little bit. So I only need email addresses if I'm saying, what is your email address? Or saying I want to deliver by email. But I think, oh, it's forgetting everything. Yes. So this was the question. This is so at Walgreens, I say.
How and when will you send your appearance? Wait, what
Yes.
was the question?
Oh, sorry.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. So I said, who is Walgreens lawyer? Larry Lawyer. And then I made an address here. I just wanted to put the word lawyer in it. So I went. But
so why are you triggering their address if you don't know that you'll need it? Or do you need to know you list their address no matter what, even if you're not serving them at their address?
Yeah, that's a good question. I guess it's just been a habit that we've always included their address.
Okay.
But you're right. If we're delivering, you should only need it if you are sending it in a non digital format. Like, so I guess if you're using
Part of their
EFM,
application, I guess I'm not sure, but yeah.
yeah, because if you're using the EFM or email, you probably wouldn't need to list it there. But I think Michelle was hitting on the right issue, which is that this question that asks for the email address, it should be the X is still the other party or the user. It's not the lawyer. So that change that I made is not in the attachment block is not pointing to the right variable. If that makes sense. I mean, what I'd like, so I guess I'm just not sure if I can continue to use this variable here, and then what the attachment block should look like.
Is
Well,
there
if
a
you-
separate, oh, sorry.
Sorry, go ahead, Lisa.
I was gonna say, is there a separate variable for lawyer email address? Is that a separate variable? Because it sounds like that's what you would want if there are different types of email variables for different types of people affected by the forum.
There could be, because the lawyer is an individual that will have an email address. So we could, I'm guessing here we could have an if to say collect the lawyer or x.lawyer.email if they're represented. Otherwise, just get x.email. But
You could have a show if and two questions, and they would have show if statements that would, but I'm not sure you could mix a variable that's on the page like x.email delivery and include a variable that is from the rest of the interview, such as is represented in your show if statement. Quentin, do you know that?
Can we scroll up a little bit and see the context of this question?
Yeah.
Okay. It's the X. So yeah, okay. That makes you could do that here. I believe that should work fine. It would be x.lawyer.email, just like you're referring to x.lawyer. That shouldn't be a problem. And then as far as like is represented, scroll up. Again, we're already using that. It's an attribute of the person. So it wouldn't be a show if variable, it would be the show if code style. When you use code, it has to refer to something defined on a different screen. You can't
Right.
mix that, but that's
That so what I'm saying is I don't think you can use both email delivery to check that they want email delivery and to check whether the person is represented. Because
you
it
couldn't
is
combine
represented.
those two conditions.
Mhm.
But let's see.
You could put the question on a separate page, possibly. So like take them to a different page for the question about the details of delivery, like the email address. It would make more screens that you'd have to write, but
There is a way with JS show if, but it's not a good way. So I would fall back to just having a different screen. I did something really similar for someone just like the other week, and that was what I did. I asked for the email address on a different screen. Let's see exactly what I did.
So I could follow up with this and just say what is, yeah, they could check the box here and then the next screen say what is Larry Lawyer's or the party's email address. It's just, it's
Or
a
you could make two screens that look like this, one that will be shown if the person is represented, and the other to be shown if the person is not represented. And then you could do a show if that is the appropriate show if.
Oh, that's that's a neat idea.
You have to ask the is represented question on a different screen, because you could just ask it on the same screen. That's what I did actually. So
Huh. That's
I only bothered to show the email of the person. I do have a follow-up question for the attorney's email anyway, but I just don't show that question. I don't show the email question unless, so here's what I did. I put it out in the chat. It's unhelpful for people watching this later. Because do you ever have the right to serve the person personally if they have an attorney or no?
Well, you're not supposed to serve the party if they are represented. I don't know what penalties there are, or I mean, I'm guessing in many cases the courts would let it slide as long as the party had actual notice in time. But the
advantage of asking whether they're represented on the same, sorry, you know what? Answer that other question first. Sorry.
That's okay. Here, I can, let me just put that in the chat just so we can look at it.
Sure.
Or I had the chat. Come on.
I'm going to have to hop off, but this has been really helpful because I was really hoping to see folks work with some of the code, and that's really useful to me. I appreciate it.
Awesome. Well, we'll see you next time, Lisa.
Yeah, thanks so much. Take care.
Sure,
Thank you.
thanks.
Bye.
Where is my chat on the screen? Sorry.
No problem.
Other computer does not.
So if you go to that top bar where the menu is, when you're sharing a screen, you might have to press escape to make it appear again. You go to that top bar and then you press the ... that's on the right.
Yeah.
Chat will be in that drop down.
So that's the thing. I don't see it. Record. Oh, it's the top one. It's the orange. I was blinded by its difference. My mistake.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think you probably understand why this would let you do the show if the way you want, but it only makes sense if it's a reasonable question to ask somebody. If it's never good to ask if they're going to serve the person or their attorney when you know they have an attorney, then this question makes less sense. And then I would take Michelle's suggestion and using an if statement on the whole question and have two versions of the question. It's more repeated. It's like a separate dialogue, basically, to ask the same stuff. So
Yeah. Okay.
you're repeating yourself a little bit, but that's not the end of the world.
Yeah.
I just find it harder to know which version is going to be used. So I try to avoid that pattern, not just for avoiding repeating myself, but because it's like less clear.
Or you could ask on this page if they're represented by a lawyer, and then ask, you know, the
Yeah, and then
question, and then you would be able to have a show if statement in here that would be based on both those variables.
Mhm.
And then you would also follow that up with, you know, what is the attorney's name and stuff on the next page or something like that. But
And then just to be like comprehensive, since we're giving you a lot of choices, we could talk about the last option, which is to load the variable into the JS show if, which from a previous screen, which is possible. It's just not the best performance, which isn't necessarily going to matter for your screen. So,
Oh, it's not. It takes a little more compute power.
yeah, but not really in a really relevant way.
Do you have a sample of that I could look at, or we just, oh, it's the JS show if right down here.
So JS show up is where
I
you
see.
start. I'm trying to see where the actual way to get the value of variables. It's get interview variables. So you have to load all of the variables. I don't think there's a way to return one at a time. So let me give you that on the chat. You can the recording. It's just like much more awkward to work with.
Mhm.
So when you use JS show if, you can use any JavaScript code that you like inside there. And one of the things you could do is load all of the interview variables and look for the one that you want to check the value of. And that link shows a little example code to load vvars to turn that into a dictionary of all of the variables in the interview. Then you could check for the value of the variable.
isn't that asynchronous though?
It
I
is.
mean, you could
Yeah.
do await, but I'm not sure that show if you don't do await, which await doesn't work on older browsers, then you're not going to be able to show if with it unless show if handles promises.
Yeah, so I don't think this is the best way to go, but just to show you how do you get the variable of a value from a variable on a different screen. This is the way you do it
Okay.
in JavaScript. Maybe Jonathan should make a version that's to get a single variable, and that's a little easier to work with.
That still would be asynchronous. I'm just letting you know. And so it wouldn't work in a
There's no
show
reason it
if
would have to
statement.
be. Why would it need to be?
This doesn't get it from the server because this has a callback function, which often indicates that this is an asynchronous function. If it's not an asynchronous function, then you can use it in the show if statement just fine.
I'm just saying that Jonathan could write a version of this JavaScript that would retrieve it, and it would be blocking. That's all.
Sure.
And it would come from the server, obviously, but
Okay. All right. Well, I will think about it because I want it to work, but I'd also like to avoid duplicating a lot of the code for like this full question.
If that is the case, I would say ask about whether they're represented on the same page. And that would be the best way to avoid duplicate code, if you think that makes sense for the user.
Sorry, do what?
You would ask about whether the other party is represented on the same page as you ask for how they will deliver. That, I believe, is the best way you can avoid duplicate code.
Yeah. Thing is, I already have so many options, I really want to keep the questions short and pages short.
For sure.
I think
Just
keeping
that would be
50
the way
at
to
top of
avoid.
the screen might be the. Yeah, I mean, I guess I would think if it's going to interfere with your user experience, then using the if statement at the top of the question is the way to go in that case.
And it would duplicate. You'd have to make a duplicate block.
Yep.
Yeah.
Everything would be the same except for the email attribute would be on the person, on the lawyer rather than the person.
Okay. But then that should work with this new attachment, this
Mhm.
attachment block.
Well, wait, I mean, the other thing you could do is, well, let me see.
Could he change the question so
It works for a person or their lawyer.
because if you just take email and you say, you know, that email represents the email of whoever, right? Then you just have delivery parties 0.email. And it doesn't matter because the when the user was asked, they were asked about the lawyer's email. And it doesn't matter whether the code knows that it's the lawyer's email versus the other party's email. The user thinks they put in, and they correctly put in the information for the lawyer, and you just use other parties.email.
The only thing about that is, Matt, you want to reuse this, right, for other interviews that also have the same certificate of service. Like in this interview, it might not matter, like the person's email for anything else on the form, but in other documents it could. So,
right. Well, the thing
You
is,
can-
I started with just that. Like I didn't care. There's only one email address that I care about, and I'm using this delivery parties. And I thought that would work, but
that may have been broken for a different reason then, because it should work. The other thing you can do is make an intermediate variable, which is just called something like, you know, delivery email. And then somewhere else you would set either other parties.email or other parties.lawyer.email to that temporary variable. Then you would have to make sure to add depends on to the blocks that use that value, like this attachment block, so that if that value changes, these pages will be updated and these documents will be updated.
I like the idea of using a different variable, but I don't know why it would need to be an intermediate variable.
That's what I call variables, that variable is not used in the final product. It is a variable.
I know what you mean by an intermediate variable. I just don't know why you would use one here. Why not just use
so like
service
do
email?
something like this?
Yeah. And always use that service email. And then you could default it to the user's, that individual's email if they already have an email from a different part of the interview. But you wouldn't require them to have.
Well, you were saying in case this information is used in another form. And if you do that and you don't set the correct email for the party, the relevant person, then that would not be able to be used in another form as the lawyer's email or as the other party's email.
Right. It would be the delivery email, like a unique concept, and you could default it to the person's. What I would be worried about is someone changing this here and then they change person X's email when they just meant to provide X's lawyer's email. Like I would be worried about overwriting something unintentionally, not having to re-enter the information as much is what my concern was before. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Right? Like you don't want to store bad data. Like it doesn't matter if you don't store information as much.
Right. Well, I think this might work though, because right now I'm just interested in the email address of this person, or of this entity, whether it's the lawyer or the party. So I'm okay with just one email address. I'm trying to think if there are other forms where you say, what's the party's email address? What's the lawyer's email address? I know it won't work in that context.
I mean, you could also make a delivery entity type thing, but I don't know that that's really useful.
Well, I think I'm going to try with this because this will let me get away with just one question. I know future me might be really upset that I made this design choice, but
One more thing to consider is, what if you moved your generic object concept to like, this question works for anybody's delivery, whether it's a person or an attorney, and you add the attorney to that delivery person's list instead of the person themselves if you're serving the attorney. That might be more confusing than helpful to try to explain in the last couple of minutes, but I don't know if it makes sense at all. So like, this question is like for X, but what if you made it for X or their lawyer, and you triggered the question for X or their lawyer rather than X and their lawyer, if they have a lawyer.
And so then
because if we switch back to the form, you don't care who the person's representing, or do you? Doesn't actually ask for who the person is that they're representing.
Right. No, I think that's a shortcoming of the form. It would be nice if it says, who's the party, what's the lawyer's, if there's a lawyer, what's their name, but.
So where you talk about like delivery, where you build delivery persons, delivery people, or whatever it was called, you could add their lawyer to that list, and then the question.
Your if statement could lead to either lawyer dot delivery method or other party dot delivery method in your logic. So in your logic block, you would do that. And because this is a generic object block, the correct person would get the email, the correct individual.
Just one more possibility, and I don't think it, like switching what the code you've already written,
Like it
doesn't seem like it's worth it really to me, because you have most of this code already working, and you're just changing delivery email. That seems like a really fine and small change for you to make. So it's just one more option that we could capture on the recording, I guess.
Yeah.
I think that's actually a pretty solid one. I kind of really like that one. It
Well,
where do
solves
you
like
build the
so many
delivery
of their
person?
problems.
Where do you build that list of delivery?
That's the one we just talked about yesterday. Yeah, right here.
Right. So instead of it being other parties plus users, you could have it be other parties and users or their attorney, conditionally, depending on whether that person has an attorney. So you would have to change that from a one-line statement, which is kind of nice as it is right now, to being like a multi-line if statement where you're adding the right person to the list. But that was just, I'm really, I think, just saying this so that it's recorded for the one person who finds this in the year. But it's not necessarily worth changing what you have.
Okay. Oh, thanks. Good. Because I have a couple of other little questions that I'm hoping we could get to. One I think is easiest. If I want to, first of all, thank you very much. I think I have a way forward now, which is great news. when I'm assembling the documents in this, I also want to have a PDF that's instructions without any fields in it. How do I set up the attachment block for that? Do I need to have a dummy field in it? Or can I just say there are no
So you want
variables?
like a blank document to be filled in some circumstances?
No, so this is just so along with this statewide form, there are statewide form instructions.
Mhm.
So I just want to include that as an assembled document as an option.
Okay.
So, which I haven't.
You could have a dummy variable. That's one way to do it.
Mhm.
I think a little clearer would be to use a DA static file. It's kind of funny. I just helped someone with this morning. So I would still use AL document as the container, but let me see. So we'll make look at line 567, and you're going to basically copy that structure for your instructions page.
Okay.
And it can go right on that same.
Right on here in the same.
It doesn't have to be its own.
Okay.
So rename that to Illinois Parents Instructions maybe would be what it's called. Okay. And then the title can be anything, but it's what will show on the download list. So I would probably just call it like instructions.
Or next steps or something.
Yeah. Well, it has it's more than just that.
Got it.
It's a whole big thing, but I'll tweak that. Okay.
The file name is the file name that the person will download. So you could call that instructions again on line 568 still.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then you're going to want it to be enabled all the time, do you think? Is it always going to be part of the final bundle, or is it optional?
Right. Well, it always will be final, but we're doing you can download whichever forms you want, or if you want to zip with everything.
Oh, okay.
So I think it should be enabled.
They won't be forced to download it, but it will be part of the bundle that they can choose. Okay. So now let's take that variable name on the left there. Yep. Put that into our bundles, probably just the user bundle and not the court bundle. I don't know if you're using the court bundle in your interview right now or not, but I would put it first probably.
Right here.
Yeah. And put a comma. Okay, and now we have to define the variable that's used to create it. So you were using a blank attachment, but I would use a DA static file instead. So make another objects block.
Separate one, okay.
Yeah, it should probably be separate. And we're gonna make one item in this. It's gonna be paste that variable that you saw on the clipboard. Bracket I. So it's going to be used for the final or the preview. It's going to be unchanging. So that's what the I could either be final or preview. And then a colon. And then DA static file, capital DAST, DAS, sorry. Yeah. And then the F is capital 2, camel case, or Pascal case rather, dot using. It's just one variable, one parameter you have to provide, which is file name. So file name equals, and then is the file already on your server?
I believe, yes, I believe so.
Okay, and it's in the templates folder?
Yeah, I'll double check, but I can just check right now. No, it's gonna, Yes.
Okay, you can keep it there.
Where should I?
It probably should go in the static folder, but it's not that important. Okay, so then we're going to finish that line 575 is where you were.
Thank you.
Inside quotes, put data /templates slash and then the name of the file.
Forward like this.
Yep.
Oops. Oh, what did I already forgot it. No, it just appeared. Okay.
And close that quotes up, and then close the bracket. And let me see. That is it. So in a bundle, you could have files that are created by attachments, by a static object, by an upload that someone made. And the important thing is to create the AL document and then to define the different versions of it, the final and the preview one, if they're any different. And so
Okay.
that's what we've done that now. So I think that should be it. Let me just make sure.
If I wanted to put this in the static files section, would I just change this to static?
You could actually delete the whole path. You could delete data templates and you wouldn't need that anymore because
Oh, really?
it looks is in the static folder.
I see. So this part could be removed if it was in static.
Yep.
Okay.
You could spell it out the way that you've done there too. I think it will work in either circumstance from what I can remember.
Gotcha. Okay.
And by the way, like what you had below, it would have worked just fine too. The only thing is like the variable name, just like you did below on line 587, it would have bracket I in it, and you would need to define the AL document that goes with it. Because the bundle is expecting a bundle of AL documents.
Okay.
I think I may have missed why DA static file is better for this kind of thing, but maybe at some point, at some point I'd be interested in hearing more about that. That's all.
I think it's just a little bit more explicit about what you're doing rather than like a dummy field. Because if we go back, I think it's worth pausing on. Matt, if you want to just switch back to the playground.
Oh, sorry.
Back closer. So you see what Matt's already figured out here underneath. If you scroll down a little bit, in order to assemble a document, it needs to have fields. And it happens to be that you can have fields that don't do anything in a PDF and it won't cause any errors. So that's what Matt
I
did.
see. You can't leave fields out. Got it.
Yeah, it just is like, I would find it just a little confusing. And also if you just look at the difference between like one line versus like 8 or so lines of boilerplate you need to put in for an attachment.
Sure.
You actually don't need all of those, but even just having a minimum of 3 lines is a little bit more than you would want if you don't really need it.
Sure.
So those are the 2 reasons I have there, but it works either way.
Okay. Would this be an okay way to designate that field if?
That would work.
Okay. So it doesn't need, I don't need to set up a fake field on the PDF and label it empty?
No, you do not. I don't think so, at least. I don't think it is going to expect there to be, I don't think it requires there to be any fields. If it gets an empty list, I think it'll be okay. Pretty sure.
Okay.
Not 100% sure about that, actually, now that you say that. But no matter what, the list of fields in the PDF does not have to correspond to a list of fields you assigned. So you could make an empty field that you didn't reference in the field statement. That definitely would be fine. But now I'm just wondering, is there some issue where if there's no fields in the PDF, it'll cause an error when you try to assemble it? I'm not sure.
Yeah. I thought I remembered that this issue coming up long ago. Bye, Michelle. Thank you. Yeah. Let me just see if I can. Finish this. I don't know if it'll work. Skip all this. Yep, great. So there are the instructions in this. I may change the order may or may not include it in the preview. I don't know, I have,
And just like a tip before we sign off, on the preview page, you might just want to change it so it points to the court bundle instead of the user bundle, because we've already not included that instructions on the court bundle. See? So if we just found the preview page now and just changed it to refer to AL court bundle instead of AL user bundle, then you wouldn't see it there.
right here.
Exactly.
Oh, I see. So I could have,
You can have
so I
two
could-
bundles with
a
different
separate list. Okay. Great. Oh, all right. Well, we didn't get to my bigger problem, which is the actual, that final assembly getting to the download page, but I'll have to save that for another day.
Okay.
But this is great. I have enough little things to work on. I can make some progress. So thank you again. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. All right. Have a good night.
Take care.